good, I think. All right. Let me start up.
I'll start. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Ned.
Hi, I'm Ned. I run the Boston Python Meetup, as you well know. Today we're going to have an awesome presentation by Glyph and J.P. and and there's a whole bunch of Twisted guys sitting in amongst you. You don't even know they're here, but they've infiltrated the space. And they're going to tell us all about Twisted, and then there's going to be a lab, which should be awesome if everyone got this stuff installed. And if not, you'll spend an hour installing the stuff, and at least you'll have the stuff. Normally there would be pizza here, courtesy of Microsoft. But there was a mix-up, and they didn't order any pizza. So soon there'll be pizza here, courtesy of the Twisted Foundation. One other thing I want to mention, on the 9th of December is a Django meetup, and it looks like an awesome lineup because Jacob Kaplan-Moss, one of the BFDLs of Django, is going to be in town to give courses, and so they've arranged the meetup for that night. So he's going to be giving the talk that night, as well as Paul Bissix, who's normally on the other side of the state, but is going to be here for some reason, and he should be awesome too. So it looks like a really big lineup, and for some reason, there are only 4 people RSVP'd to that meetup so far, but it should be a great thing, so you should sign up for it. What else do I want to say? If you need something to drink, that fridge is open for anyone to use, courtesy of Microsoft. And the space is courtesy of Microsoft. They're normally very nice hosts. The pizza snafu is really unusual. That's it. This is Glyph. He is going to lead us through the twisty passages of Twisted.
So, hi everybody. Just want to point out, that's Jean-Paul over there. He's known as XRCoon on IRC. I'm Glyph, known as pedestrianly enough Glyph on IRC. And welcome to our presentation lab, which I decided to title Taking Over Everything on the Internet with Twisted. So first, I'd like to talk about, you probably already know about Twisted. A lot of people know a lot of stuff about Twisted. It's been in the community for a long time. I'd also like to cover some potential misconceptions that people have about Twisted, since a lot of people hear about it in a one-off comment and don't really investigate. So let's get started with the basics. Twisted is event-driven. This means that instead of waiting for functions to return, you respond to events. There are a bunch of other ways to say this. One of them is non-blocking. That means that when you make a request for some input, your program doesn't block and wait for the input to arrive, it just immediately keeps going. Another way to put this is asynchronous, which means not synchronous. But if you don't know what asynchronous means, that's probably not very helpful. What that means is not at the same time. But sorry if this seems a little bit repetitive, I'm just trying to stress that all these different things are really just saying the same thing about Twisted. So what's not happening at the same time is what else? First, let's take a look at a normal or synchronous example. We call a function to get some stuff, and then we do something with the stuff. These happen at the same time. Your program will just sit there and wait so that immediately, as far as your logic is concerned, stuff is just right there. This is true even if get stuff has to make a really slow request over a really slow network. It's going to take 25 minutes because of really long round-trip latency. So that's why Twisted isn't like this. Asynchronous code, by contrast, you wouldn't call get stuff, you'd call get stuff later. You give it something to do when the stuff arrived. So in this case, the function to call when the stuff arrived is got stuff. And the reason that it's called asynchronous is the two things that are not happening at the same time are this do something and get stuff later. Those happen at different times. And the consequence of this is you can call more stuff, you can make more requests, and they'll be run immediately when you request them immediately. You can fire off a dozen or 100 requests all at once in an asynchronous framework, and you'll just process the answers as fast as they come back. And that's why asynchronous frameworks, and Twisted in particular, have a reputation for being fast, because you can queue up all the work that you want to do, and you're limited only by CPU. By contrast, this is why the standard library and some other things that Twisted is kind of designed to replace are a bit slow. It's because you just have to wait one after another for all your requests to get finished. Even if you got plenty of spare CPU lying around, you have to wait for whatever is going to satisfy that function call to be done. So in this example, let's say that C is ready right now. It's not a super fast connection. You can just get that data immediately. But A takes 5 minutes to get. Well, that means we're not even going to ask for C until A is already done. So the program slows down and just waits for everything to happen. So Twisted is also networked. Has lots of networking tools, and that's mostly what we're going to be talking about today. I do want to also note that Twisted contains a lot of utilities for processing events. There are Twisted applications which really don't do much networking at all, but just do, for example, animation or audio sample playback. These are both things that Twisted has utilities to do. So a lot of people are just like using Twisted, and because of the facilities it provides for networks, you can use those same facilities for GUIs or for audio or for timing, a bunch of different things. Twisted also has a reputation for being powerful, which is, of course, completely accurate, as well as being flexible. And also has a reputation for being complicated. Every time I hear this, I wonder, complicated compared to what? So, compared to raw sockets, well, you need concurrency for raw sockets. You can't just have socket calls. So you could use threads, but threads have a lot of problems of their own. You have state synchronization, all kinds of stuff like that. You can use multiprocessing, but then you have to deal with the pickle module and serializability of all your shared state. And efficiently getting state between your worker processes is hard, and then when you coordinate them all, you need something like Twisted sitting on top anyway, so that doesn't really help you. Not to mention the fact that raw sockets aren't very portable. You end up having to rewrite the same code 3 or 4 times because the Windows error codes from socket.send are completely different than the ones on Windows, which are slightly different than the ones on the Mac, and so on and so forth. So another thing you can compare Twisted to is async core, which is a fair comparison. Twisted and async core at least do kind of the same thing. But this is not a fair comparison in the sense that it's not fair to async core. Async core is like 15 years old. It hasn't been updated. Nobody maintains it. It looks superficially simple if you already know how to write Unix socket programs. But aside from that one trivial moment of apparent simplicity, if you already have some existing expertise, everything's hard. You still have all the same portability issues. You still have all the same concurrency issues that you would have with some of these other solutions. So if you ever hear someone complaining that async core is so much simpler, it's only simpler for this really, really trivial beginning part of writing your code. And only if you already have some bad expectations of what it should do for you. Another thing that people compare Twisted to sometimes, which still confuses me, is Django, which is weird. It's like comparing Drupal to Linux. Like they do totally different things. Really, if you were going to compare Twisted to Django, it would go more like this. There's a lot of different stuff that Twisted can do for you with just Python function calls that Django can't do at all, and that's not no problem with Django. I mean, Django is a web framework. It's for this one particular problem, and if you have that one particular problem, it may well solve it better than Twisted, but it's not. You can even use Twisted with Django. There's no need to separate them into these different piles. Twisted specifically integrates with Django if you want to use them both in the same application. So, Twisted is not complicated. In fact, it's really not complicated. The best way to express how not complicated it is Twisted is Python. It's just Python code. And as we all know, Python code is nice and simple, because that's why we're all here. Another thing about Twisted that's maybe kind of a good thing and kind of a bad thing is that it's a framework. In fact, that was originally our slogan. It was the framework of your internet. But around 2000,